Hey everyone, Sports Bubba here. We are going to be reading a book today called I Survived the Battle of Gettysburg in the year 1863. Now this is like a short book, but we're going to read two chapters each. We're going to be reading two chapters, and hope you'll like it. If you want me to continue reading books from this series, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for daily stories, just like this. So let's get to it. Chapter 1, July 2nd, 1863. A battlefield in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Okay. It was the Battle of Gettysburg, the biggest and bloodiest battle of the Civil War. Mighty armies from the United States North and South were fighting to the death. Cannons shook the ground and set the sky on fire. Bullets flew through the air like deadly raindrops. And in the middle of it all stood an 11-year-old boy named Thomas. Just 3 weeks before, Thomas had been a slave living on a farm in Virginia, and now he was on this battlefield in Pennsylvania, trying to help the Northern soldiers who were fighting so he could be free. Thomas had come to bring the men more ammunition for the rifles. He had to get away from here. He needed to get back to his little sister, who was waiting where it was safe. But then a huge cannonball came sailing through the air. It crashed into an ammunition wagon. Kaboom! Flames shot up. Tree branches turned into torches. Razor-sharp strips of metal and nails flew through the air, stabbing Thomas in the leg and cutting his forehead. He dove for cover, rolling down a slippery hill. Gunsmoke filled the air, choking him, blinding him. He had to get away. He staggered across the field, coughing and gagging. Blood spilled into his eyes from the gash on his forehead and gushed from the cut on his leg. And through the blood and smoke was a terrifying sight. Hundreds of rebel soldiers charging across the meadow, the rifles pointed right at him. Boom, boom, boom! Thomas ran, but not fast enough. He turned aside. A rebel soldier went straight for him. The soldier's eyes were red with fury. His face twisted into a crazed grin. He aimed his rifle at Thomas. No! Thomas couldn't die here. Boom! Thomas' chest seemed to shatter like glass. He jerked back and fell into the blood-soaked grass. Chapter 2. Three weeks earlier, late afternoon, Knox's farm, Oak Ridge, Virginia. Thomas crept slowly towards the squirrel. It was fat and it would make a fine supper. Just thinking about it made his stomach rumble. Times were tough on the farm. His owner, Mr. Knox, could barely feed his horses or his slaves. Thomas was just about to snare the squirrel when his little sister's voice sang out. Thomas! The squirrel darted away. Thomas turned toward Bertie, fuming. She was only 5 years old, but she knew better than to yell when he was trying to hunt. But then she was, with a crooked grin and twiggy legs, rushing toward him. His heart turned to mush. Look who I caught, she said proudly, holding out her cupped hands. Inside was a little green snake, covered with mud. Isn't it beautiful? She said. Thomas had to smile. That was Bertie. Give her a grimy little snake, and she'd see a butterfly. Bertie held up her hands and looked at the baby snail, putting her face so close, Thomas thought she might kiss it. All right, she said to the snake. I'm going to let you go now. She crouched down and released it onto the dirt. They watched as the creature streaked away, disappearing into the shadows of the forest. Thomas wondered, will he and Bertie ever be as free as that snake? They'd been born slaves on this farm. The mama had died here when Buddy was a baby. And 2 summers ago, the cousin, Clem, had been sold away to a plantation down in Mississippi, where slaves were worked half to death. Clem was only 17 at the time, but he's but he'd been almost like a father to them after Mama died. He watched over them, cared for them, protected them. He taught Thomas about freedom. He said, "That's not far from here. In the states up north, slavery was illegal. People believed it was people there believed it was evil." Clem told stories about slaves who'd run away from owners. They followed the North Star, the brightest star in the sky. They traveled for days and days and made it to freedom. They were brave enough to run through dark forests and snake-filled swamps. They were clever enough to outsmart the slave catchers, who tracked them with furious dogs that could smell them from miles away. But then they make it to freedom, just like we will one day. Clem would say, his eyes flashing like tiny torches, "One day we will run." He closed his eyes. "Picture it, Thomas," he said. "Picture it in your mind. Can't you see us? Can't you see us all together?" And Thomas could see it. Bright pictures that filled his mind and gave him a flickering feeling of hope in his heart. But then Clem was taken and those pictures went dark. Just think about Clem gave Thomas a searing pain, even worse than the last of Mr. Knox's whip. Now the only picture in his mind was the one of Clem being dragged away in chains. "Are you sad, Thomas?" Buddy said, looking up at him. He put his hand on her head. "How could I be sad with you here with me?" he said. With Clem gone, it was up to Thomas to make Buddy feel safe. "I'm just thinking about how to catch us a nice supper," he said. He sent Buddy back to the shack to weed the garden, but then, just a few minutes later, she was back. She was breathing hard, her eyes wide and scared. Was she hurt? Those men are here," she whispered, grabbing Thomas's hand. "What man?" Thomas said. "Hardly anyone came to the farm anymore. Mrs. Knox was dead. Mr. Knox's 2 sons were gone, fighting in the war. Those bad men," but he said, "the ones who took Clem." Thomas's heart cracked open. I heard them talking, but he said, her words choked by tears. "They've come for you." Thomas heard voices from across the field. Mr. Knox calling for him. "Boy!" Mr. Knox was saying, "I need you now." Thomas stood there frozen. He heard Clem's voice in his mind. "Run!" But Thomas grabbed Buddy, and like that last snake, Thomas and Buddy disappeared into the shadowy forest.